Hi and welcome. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create this awesome profile card using React, TypeScript, and we will even create our custom hook so we can reuse this functionality. So if you are looking for React and TypeScript projects, you've come to the right place. Keep watching. So the first step is to create a new React application. So create a new folder and open it in VS Code. After that, run a new terminal and type npm create vite dot to create a React app in the working directory. Then select React and choose TypeScript. Now we have to run npm install. This process will take some moment, so I will skip this part. We're going to use Axios in this tutorial, so let's install Axios. Now let's get rid of the CSS files already used. For that, in the source folder, open main.tsx and remove the CSS file import. Then go to app.tsx and let's remove the CSS file import, the React logo, and return a simple h1 for now. Okay, now let's start the development server. For that, type npm run dev. Let's create our components. So in the source folder, create two new folders, one for the components and the other for the hooks. In the components folder, create a users.tsx file and run rafce shortcut to initialize a new component. While we are here, let's also create a users.css file and import it in the users component. Now go to the app.tsx and render our users component. The next step is to create our custom hook. So in the hooks folder, let's create a useProfileIterator.ts file, in which we will export a function useProfileIterator that takes as a parameter a URL. We will have three states in our hook. One state for the index of the current user that will start at 0. We will also have a loading state to render a loading visual while fetching a new user. And the last state will represent our list of users where we will store our fetched users. Before moving forward, let's take a look on the API we're going to use. So we will be using an API called randomuser.me/API that returns a random user. In this tutorial, we're going to use the email, the name, the phone, the picture, and the age informations. Okay, let's go back to our hook. At the top, let's add a type for our user that will contain the different fields with their types. Make sure to export the type user, as we will need to use it later. Now let's create a fetchUser function that we will use to fetch a user when the component mounts and each time we click next while we are at the last user. So before sending our request with Axios, we will set loading to true so we can render a loading visual. And we will set loading back to false in the finally block, which runs in either cases. To send our request, we're going to use Axios. Make sure to import it at the top. The URL we are going to use will be provided to the hook. So after getting the data, we're going to check if it contains a results array and if there is an element at the index 0. If so, we're going to add that new user to our list of users. So let's call setUsers with a callback function so we can access our previous list of users. Before moving forward, let's add a type for our list of users, which is an array of the type user we created earlier. Okay, inside the callback of setUsers, let's return a new array where we will spread the previous users and we will add to them a new user. With that, our fetchUser function is done. Now let's create the previous and next functions to move forward and backward in our list of users. The logic of these functions will be simple, as we will just have to increment or decrement the index value. So for the previous function, we will check if we are not on the first user and decrement our index by 1. On the next function, we will check if we are not on the last user and increment our index by 1 and return to prevent fetching a new user. If we are on the last user, we will call fetchUser that will return a promise. And when the promise resolves, we're going to increment the index. To fetch a user at the beginning, we will call fetchUser inside useEffect with an empty dependency array. To use our hook, we will have to return the different states and functions we have created. So we will return the current user, which is the user of the current index. We will return also the loading state, and we will return our previous and next functions. Let's add the type for the return value of the hook. It will be an array of the type user, boolean, and I will create a type function to represent the next and previous functions. With that, our useProfile iterator is done and it's ready to be used. So now go back to our users.tsx and let's use our hook and provide the URL of the API to it. As you can see, hooks make the code more clean and reusable, as they can encapsulate all the logic. So now let's work on the JSX of the users component. We'll have a div with a class name of user container. Inside of it, we will render a loading div if we are fetching a user. Or the card component that we will create in a moment, for which we will provide the current user. After this block, we will add another div controls. Inside of it, we will have two buttons to navigate in our list of users. A button previous with a class name of previous and onClick set to the previous function. And a next button with a class name of next and onClick set to the next function. These functions are provided by the hook. Now let's create our card component that will receive a user prop. Okay, let's add the JSX for this component. So we'll have a div with a class name of card. Inside of it, create two divs, one with a class name of top.pg and the other with a class name of content. Inside of the content div, add a new div with a class name imageContainerBG, and inside of it, add another div and give it a class name of imageContainer. Inside of the imageContainer div, we will render the thumbnail of the user. So add an image tag and give it a source of user.thumbnail. Okay, before moving forward, let's add the type for our user prop. So create another type user props that will have a user field with the type of user that we have created earlier. So make sure to import it from the use profile iterator file. After adding the type, as you can see now, we'll have autocomplete for the names of the fields, which is cool. Let's also set the alt attribute to the name of the user for the image tag. Okay, after the image container bg div, add another div and give it a class name of infos. Inside of it, add a span with a class name of full name in which we will render the name of the user. Then add another span with a class name of age to render the age of the user. After the infos div, add two more divs to render the phone of the user and the email. With that, our card component is done. Let's check it out in the browser. Okay, as you can see, our card is working. We have the thumbnail, the name, the age, the phone and the email. We can also navigate in our list of users, and our hook is working as expected. The next step is to apply some styling to make our card look much better. For that, go to users.css file and let's begin by applying a background color to the body. Then let's apply a max width of 300 pixels and a margin auto to the user container class. Okay, now let's work on the card class. So apply a height of 270 pixels, a background color of white, a border radius of 15 pixels, and a margin bottom of 15 pixels. Let's also set overflow to hidden and add this box shadow. Set also display to flex and flex direction to column. Okay, let's work on the controls section. This section will have some similar properties like the background color and the border radius, and let's also copy the box shadow property. After that, set the display to flex and justify content to space between, and add a padding of 15 pixels. Okay, now let's customize the buttons. For that, add a background color of white, a cursor of pointer, set the padding to 5 pixels and 20 pixels, and set the border radius to 15 pixels. For the next button, I want to change its color to this purple color, and a border of 2 pixels with the same color. On the hover, I want to set its background color to the purple color, and change its color to white. Let's do the same for the previous button, but with a yellow color this time. Okay, now let's continue the customization of the card div. We're going to work on the top bg div. So set the height to 80 pixels and set the background color to the purple color. Moving to the content div, apply a flex of 1 so it can take the remaining space of the card. Set the display to flex and flex direction to column, and set the justify content to space between. Then add a padding of 15 pixels and set padding top to 60 pixels. Set also the align items to center. And set position to relative. Okay, now let's work on the thumbnail image. For that, let's customize the image container BG class. Apply a position of absolute, a width and height of 80 pixels, a border radius of 50% to make it circular, and set the background color to white. Then add a padding of 5 pixels. We want to position the image container BG to the top of the content div. For that, set top to 0 and left to 50%, and apply a transform of translate minus 50% in both directions. Then on the image container div, apply a width and height of 100%, a border radius of 50%, and set overflow to hidden. To finish our work on the image container, apply a width of 100% on the image tag. With that, our card looks much better already. Now let's work on the infos div. So set display to flex and justify content to space between. Then apply a width of 100%. On the full name span, apply a font weight of bold, a max width of 180 pixels, set white space to no wrap, text overflow to ellipses, and set overflow to hidden. The name can be sometimes too long, that's why we applied a max width of 180 pixels. On the edge span, let's apply a color of gray and set max width to 70 pixels. With that, our card is done. The last thing I want to do is to add a loading animation when fetching another user, because it looks bad right now, as you can see. For that, go back to users.tsx component and create a loader component. Inside of it, we will return the same JSX of the card component. And by the way, I have created a full video on how to create a skeleton animation. The link to that video will pop up right now somewhere at the top corner. Now I will open another project to get the CSS code for the skeleton animation. So I will copy this code and paste it right here. As you can see now, our skeleton animation is working. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial where I showed you how to create a profile card iterator using React, TypeScript, and we have seen also how to create a custom hook. If you want to see more tutorials like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.